Hello everyone. In this video we're going to talk about the last two files, the customer servlet and the customer DB class file. One thing that I want to go back over, and that is just the details of the data tables, and I just want to do a quick review of that just so that you know that nothing's happening by magic here and how those data tables work. So let's go to the display customers. And then there in the data tables, you can see we can do our list of how many entries, how many records we want to show. We could do the searching. Now realize this actually doesn't search the whole database. It only searches what's displayed from the database. So what's ever displayed on a page, it will search, but it won't actually search in the database itself. So say I want to find everything on Shady Lane, SHDY. Notice how I start typing and it automatically finds characters associated with SH, and then A, Shady Drive there, not Shady Lane, but Shady Drive. I want to find out Panama City Beach, PANA. I just start PAN, there's Panama City. Again, I could do the same thing with balance or whatever. I want to find a balance of who has 130, so 13. Notice that the 3 is displaying there, anything with 13 there. Then I go to 9. And then it shows the 139.52. So again, it will show whatever I start typing characters, it will display that. It will, if I want to have 100 entries in here and I only want to show 10 per page, it'll have pagination here in the bottom right corner. I could click previous, next, or each one of the buttons. A button will be displayed for as many remaining entries as there are. Again, ascending, descending sorts on all of the fields. Now, I don't want to have ascending, descending sort on edit and delete, right? We're not going to ascend and descend the sorts on the edit and delete buttons, but only on the fields that have data. Now, let me show that code here. Gang, this is in the customers.jsp file. So in the customers.jsp file, all the magic, and I'll make this a little bit larger, you have this. There's nothing you need to do, but I just want you to understand what's going on. Number one, you have to have the JavaScript. This include file can't be commented out. If it's commented out, then it won't work. So make sure it's not commented out. In other words, make sure that you don't have any type of JavaScript, I should say Java server pages comments like this, right? This would be Java server pages comments. So if we had that, this code would not work because it's commented out. Okay, so make sure it's not commented out, and then also make sure if you want to find out any more information, just go to this link right here, line 118. I show you how to change the length menu if you want, but if you want to see everything involved with data tables, just go to datatables.net, and you can find out a lot of information there about what data tables are, how you can set the values, etc., etc. One thing I want you to know, so here's the length menu, right? This is a multi-dimensional array. There's two arrays in there. This is actually the number of records that will be shown, and this is what is going to be displayed in the drop-down menu. It has nothing to do with the functionality, but it has to do with what's being displayed. In other words, that array is associated with this drop-down menu. It has nothing to do with the capability of this data table. That's just what's being displayed. The capability is actually in this array to the left. Is it going to be shown by 10, 25, 50? Generally what you want to do, though, you want the values to match each other. So whatever the capability is on the left, you want it to match what's being displayed in the drop-down menu. Okay, one thing here I want to say before we go into customer servlet and customer DB, that is these, here's an array right here. Here's a jQuery array right here. You can tell by the open and close square brackets. The number must match the number of fields. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 must match the number of fields. Otherwise, this code will not work. So fname 1, lname 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 for edit, and 13 for delete. Now notice we're not providing sort capabilities for edit and delete. We're saying orderable false, but all the other ones are going to be orderable. So fname, lname, street, city, state, zip will all be orderable, but the edit and delete will not be. Notice there is no comma here at the last element in this array. This is for the edit and this is for the delete. There's no comma. There's no comma there. So make sure that you have that code right. But I gave it to you, so just don't touch it, and it works as is. Now, where do these come? Where do these fields come? There's one other thing I want to talk about before I go into the fields, and that is the ID. This ID of my table must match the ID of the table itself. And there it is right here on line 44. Now, it may not be on your line 44, but where you have the table element, you see the ID says my table, and it's case sensitive, lowercase my, capital T. The fields themselves have to match the number. So we said there's 13. There's not 13 here, gang. Right now there's only 5, right? Fname, lname, email, and the and NBSP semicolon stands for non-breaking space. That's why there's no header here for edit or delete. We don't need a header. We have the buttons here. So we just put a non-breaking space here. It's not going to be sortable. We're not going to sort the edit and delete buttons, right? So, but it still has to match. We have to have 13 columns. And in a previous video, I showed you what those columns were. They also have to match this for each. So if you watch the previous video, you'll have all that information. But just realize the number of columns has to match the jQuery here at the very bottom of the customers.jsp file. All right, gang, we're done with that. Let's go into the comparison of the customer servlet, mine versus yours. And I'm only going to go into the differences. Now, you'll notice for one, you may not notice until I just pointed it out, but at the very bottom here, I have this name here, customer servlet underscore student underscore A5 underscore completed. Please do not name your file this. This is my naming convention so that I know what code was discussed in that particular assignment when I refer back to the video. So this is just for my notes. You're still going to call it the same as you have been before, and that is, look at the left here, customer servlet.java. The C and the S are capitalized. So that's going to be the name of the servlet. This is just for instructional purposes, but essentially what you have to date is on the right, mine is on the left. Let's begin. Okay, let's not begin. Let's talk just a little bit about some of this code here so that you're not left wondering what's going on here. Gang, you could do some research. We talked about packages before. We talked about the import statements and what we need. We also have the 2 classes that we need for this particular servlet now. As of assignment 5, we added the customer DB. We needed the customer class before, but for assignment 5, we needed the customer DB. We mapped this servlet to customer admin, capital A. So we're good with that. One thing I want to talk about are these variables. What are these variables for? Well, one, we're creating a session variable because we're going to be passing data between the servlet and the Java server page. So we need to create a session variable. And by the way, gang, when you have a web application, there's different ways of passing data. We talked about those. You could use a query string, you could use a hidden field, but neither one of those are safe when you're dealing with secure information. Generally, with secure information, you want to use session variables to pass data. So here we're using another method of passing data, and that is we're creating a session variable. Now, these variables are for other capability as well too. So the URL is if the user tries to access the page, say here they put in a URL and they try to bypass the edit buttons or whatever, they try to bypass it, the default page will be, let me make this a little bit larger, will be index.jsp. We're going to initialize our message variable to the empty string. We're going to initialize our action variable to null, and we're going to initialize our CID, the customer ID variable, to null. Okay. A lot of this other code that I'm providing for you here, I actually have comments here. I'm not going to get stuck in the weeds very much about what's going on. I gave you comments that you could take a look at what's happening. Essentially, what's going on is this, gang, and that is that when a user comes from a particular page and the name property or attribute is set to a specific value. Let me just show you one here, okay? The one that you know about is you know of a couple, but let's go to the one we started with, and that's customer form. Remember in the customer form, in the hidden field, what that name property was? Well, let's just show it to you one more time here. And that's what's happening here. It's getting the data from whatever page is passing this name property. Here it's modify underscore customer, and I said in the comments that it's coming from customers.jsp. And then we're going to set the action. We're going to set the CID to whatever is being passed from customers.jsp. And we're doing the same thing for delete underscore customer, and that's coming from the buttons, right? From the edit button or from the delete button of those hidden fields. Now, this is customer form. This page right here, this is our introduction page for A4, A5, and P2. This is customer form. Now, you could see the URL right there, customerform.jsp with a query string. Well, guess what? In our hidden field, we're seeing a name called action. And I went over this before, so I'm not going to deliberate on that. But it's right here, gang, on my line 106. There it is right there, okay? And that is being passed to the servlet customer admin. Now remember, with the web annotation, we could change the name of that, line 33, right, to customer admin. The actual name of this file, though, is customer servlet. Again, another way of providing a layer of security. So when we call this customer admin, capital A, which is really going to the customer servlet file, we're going to pass a hidden field with a value, with a name property called action, and with the value called add underscore customer. And so that is where this information is coming. So here we go. The name property is action, and we're saying that we're going to, whatever is in that action property, we're going to assign it to the action variable. Now, here, again, going through the logic, whether it's modify underscore customer, delete underscore customer, update underscore customer, it's going to do a specific, it's going to perform a specific function, whether it's going to be adding, updating, or deleting. Or if someone tries to bypass that, it's just going to go to the index.jsp file. In other words, to the home page if they try to circumvent the application. Okay? All right. Next, just some more conditional clauses here, whether if the action is null, the user tries to bypass it, or if they try to join. So if it's a join, and that would be coming from the thanks.jsp file, by the way. This thanks, if you look at thanks.jsp, the value is actually going to be join. Now you're not going to see it here, but you will see it in the code if you open up thanks.jsp. The user clicks on return, it's actually going to pass the join value, and it's going to send them to customer form, and then where they can add another customer if they want to. Okay? All right, that's that. And then here we have the add customer. We added that in assignment number 5. And then there are some other capabilities as well too. So with that backdrop, let's compare the code. My file on the left to yours on the right as of assignment 5. And now we're in project 2 and what you have to do for project 2. Okay, first, your line 89 and 90. If it's not specifically 89 and 90, if you did something else to it where it may not match this particular line number, yours is on the right. You're going to have to uncomment line 89 and 90 and just look for the action equals modify underscore customer. Okay, so that's coming from the customers.jsp file. All right, so what we're going to do, and I'm going to add, I'm not only going to uncomment it, but I'm going to add some other comments. If you notice mine here, I put some other comments here too to help understand what's going on. So let me just add all of this to it. Okay, so what did I add to it? Now you'll see that this is, I'll make this a little bit smaller so you could see all the code here, and then I'll make it a little bit larger. Just uncomment those lines. That's all you have to do, lines 89 and 90. But I also added, on line 90, I added a comment. This is to pass data from the servlet to the JSP using the session object and the set attribute method. Now, what that set attribute method is, it has a name argument that's being passed and a value. Now here, the user, if you look at this session variable, the user is right here, this user object that we instantiated in line 89, okay? And this name that we're giving it is user, so when we pass this to whatever page is going to receive this, the variable that it's going to see with the data is user, and then what it's the data that's going to be included in that user name, that's on the right, so the data is on the right, the actual value, is going to be passed to the modify.jsp file right here. And that all can be accomplished with a session variable. Okay, so lines 89 and 90, just uncomment it, and you'll be good to go. Let me make that a little bit larger so you can see it. You don't have to add the comments if you don't want to, but that's just to give you some information on what's going on there. So just uncomment that. Okay, so your line 89 and 90. Next, your lines 96 and 97. Just uncomment those. Okay, so I'm going to do that and just say A. So your line 96, 97 needs to be uncommented. Next. Now, what you're going to add here for the update customer. Now, here, you'll see starting on your line 40 on the right, I commented everything out so that it wouldn't be problematic when we did assignment number 5. So you're going to have to uncomment it and then add some code. So let's see what you have to add. So first of all, we're going to uncomment that. And then you'll see that the else if there, your line 139. And then you're going to have to add everything on the left. So let me make this a little bit larger. So if you're looking at my file here, look what you're going to have to add. And look where it starts on your line 144. So I'm going to hit A, and then it's going to add it there. There's what you have to add. Street, city, state, zip, phone, and this all is added underneath your line 139 for update customer. Okay, right there. All this has to be added. Street, city, state, zip, phone. Don't forget you also have to add balance and spell total sales correctly. Here total sales is coming from the JSP file, and that is the name property total underscore sales, no capital letters, it's all lowercase. Okay, so add your lines 144 to 148 and then your 151 to 152. I'm sorry, 150 to 152 on the right. You already have email. Okay, let's go and see what other differences there are. If you look at your 155, you're going to have to add the variables there for street, city, state. Don't forget the underscore V. So you'll have to add all of these. All right. Street, city, state, zip, phone, notes. I'll make that a little bit smaller so you could see all of them. Let's see if I can make this a little bit larger. Yeah, there you go. You could see notes there. Okay. So, of course, you don't see the ending parenthesis. There's two parentheses there, gang. So it's going to have to look like that. All right. And I'll show this on one page as well, too, here. So let me make this a little bit larger right now. And that's line 155 under update customer. You have to make these changes. Let's keep moving. All right. In your else if clause, for the else get and update customer, you're going to have to add street underscore V, city underscore V, state underscore V, zip underscore V, phone underscore V, and then underneath email, you're going to add balance underscore V, total sales underscore V, and notes underscore V. The total sales, the S is capitalized. Next, don't forget to uncomment line 178 because you want to actually update that now. Next, we're going to have to create an array list and set the attribute. Remember that we got that the user's array list. Now, gang, what's going on here? Let's uncomment that first. Okay, and then let's go over here and show you what's going on. In this update, if it's not valid, we're going to send it back to modify and tell the user that, hey, you need to put the correct data in here. However, if it is good data, then what we're going to do is create a customer object setting the session so that we're going to pass it in between our servlet and our JSP file. The object variable is called user, and then what we're going to do then is use that object variable for setting the ID, retrieving it from the get parameter action property, and then we're going to set the F name, L name, street, city, state, zip, phone, email, balance, total sales, and notes. And then we're going to actually pass that entire object to the customer DB class and the update method. And then you'll see when we get to the customer DB class that we're actually going to pass an entire object with all of those properties filled in. And then once we do that, once we update them, once we update that customer, then what we're going to do is display the customers. So what's happening, gang, is this. I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to display the customer. I'm just going to make one small change. I'm going to go to Edit, and I'm going to say, instead of F name Billy, I'm going to say, no, I'll keep Billy, and then I'll put for last name Smith. Okay, so let's update it. And you can see that it did update correctly, Smith. Now, if you want to double check, you could always do this as well too. And just, go to the actual data source, do up arrow, select all from customer, and you can see that it's now Billy Smith. All right. Well, that's what happens here in the servlet. First, we create a session variable. We set those values to what the user entered. Okay, the user entered Smith. We set those values to that customer object. And then after we update that customer, here it's using a user variable, line 162, right? That's where all these user dot, that's where that comes from, that user variable. And we're setting the properties of user, and then we're passing an entire customer here. The object variable is user. We're passing the entire customer to the update method, and then we display what's been changed. notice it's going to then forward to the customers.jsp file right here. And it shows the new update. So it forwards it after the change, after it's been modified. The user hits update, it updates the database, and then it displays that new change for the user. All right, let's continue on. Notice we have to, your line 186, we have to remove that multi-line comment. So let's remove it. Let's keep going. Your line 189, we have to uncomment that line. It's commented now. We have to uncomment it. We have to uncomment the delete functionality in line 192. Then we have to allow for the delete, we have to create an array list. So let's uncomment line 195 and 196. And then that is actually all of our changes. So let me show this in totality. Make this a little bit larger and set this to 1. And let's look at all the shaded areas. So nothing is shaded here. The first shading is on your line 96 and 97. Make sure it looks like this. Okay. The next shaded area is right here under the update customer. You could take a look at those shaded areas and modify them accordingly. Don't forget line 155. Make sure that you have all those variables in line 155 and they're all coming from here, right? They're all coming from there. That's where the variables are coming from. And then you're just making a pass of those variables to the function is valid input. Okay, so make sure all those shaded areas are in there. Next, let's go to the next shaded area. So here we're in update user. We're in the else clause here. So I'll make sure all of these shaded areas are covered. Let me take out that blue. I don't think that's helpful, but starting from the else clause, see all the gray shaded areas, you have to add those. Don't forget your array list and the set attribute method for the request object, line 181 and 182. You could pause it right there and change it. And then don't forget your line in the delete customer. Don't forget the shaded area for lines 189, 192, 195, and 196. Gang, that's all. We've done this before. The only other thing I want to say is we've been using the do post method because that's what we're doing. We're using the do post method, but what we also have to do, we can't just use one. We also have to override the do get method. And how we do that is this. We're overriding the do get method. So if there's a get method that's used in a form, all it's going to do is call do post. It's going to pass the request and response object, and then it's going to call this method here at the top, and that is the do post method, and do everything inside of this do post method. Okay, gang, that's everything for customer servlet. I'm going to come back for customer DB. See you in a bit. All right, gang, this is it. Customer DB. Our customer DB class is actually the class that does all the heavy lifting between the web application and the actual data repository. Now, yes, there are other files and classes that are necessary, but the customer DB class directly communicates with the data repository. Here, it's our relational database pet store. Now, in assignment number 5, we created a method called insert, and it returned a value based upon a customer object that was passed to it, and it inserted a customer into the customer table. Let's review that. Let's revisit that here for a second. Now, again, keeping the same convention, my file's on the left, yours is on the right. One thing I want to draw your attention to, again, I call this customer DB underscore student underscore A5 underscore completed. Please do not name it that. That's just for my reference, so I know exactly where you should be in the code up to how far we coded at a particular assignment. What you want to name it is the same as you have before, and that is just add on to what we're going to be talking about in this video to customer DB. Okay, so it should be customer DB, capital C, capital D, capital B, .java. Now, gang, before I go on, I want to make sure that you understand you're going to have to recompile your customer servlet and your customer DB files. Those two files. You do not have to recompile customer. You don't have to do any other recompilation with the customer, with the connection pool, anything in the going to the classes here in the data package that we had, customer, the DB util, that was for doing some debugging, but you're not going to have to recompile the customer pool class. We already did that. We don't have to do it again, but you will have to recompile two files, customer servlet and customer db.java. All right. Now, again, you're going to name this customer db.java, and let's begin just by showing what you have to date. And what you have to date, I'm going to make this a little bit smaller so you could see this. Well, only so you could see the entire class that you have here. You got your package, you got your import statements for SQL and for array list. You got your import, you're going to import a customer class, and then here is you're going to import the customer class, and then you're going to create a customer DB class, which is all of this. And inside of that customer DB class, you're going to create a customer method, which goes all the way to line 59. Okay? Now what we're going to do is we're going to add more methods to this particular class. So I'm going to make this larger, and we're going to begin from there. All right, gang. It's really going to be just one differentiation. And if you look at my file, you'll see that I have update, delete, select customer, select customers, plural, and then I have an additional one called email exists. Now the email exists method you actually don't have to do. That's just something if you want to add additional capabilities to your application, you would use the email exists. It would be for something like if you wanted to have a user that they forgot their password and they submitted their email. If it existed in the database, then you would pass their password to them in an email, in a secure email, and then or just a even better, pass their temporary password so that they could put their own permanent password in there. Anyway, that's something you could use, or you could look up a user based upon their email. But again, you don't have to include that. I only included it here for you so that you can add additional capabilities to your application. All right, let's begin. So it's just one big differentiation. And I'm going to hit A, and you're going to see all the changes that you're going to have to do. Now what I'm going to do here is this. I'm going to go to your file. I'm going to only include your file, and I'm going to max out the code. Okay, so you have everything from insert to here, your line 59. Okay. One thing I want to reiterate, and I told you this before, I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. Make sure, gang, that you have a space. This query here, the variable called query, it's a string variable. Make sure that you have a space before that end double quotation mark. And if you want to make double sure, you could put a space at the beginning after the double quotation mark before values, because you don't want those two to run into each other. You want to make sure there's a space. But as long as you have a space at one of them, like here, a space before this double quotation mark on line 30, you'll be good to go. You're going to have to do this in another area as well too. But so you already have the insert method. Okay, again, to line 59. You already have that. Let's go into the other methods that you need. You're going to need the update method. And I can't show all of it here, at least not in this size. So I'm going to stop at the try block right there. Actually, no. There's update, and I'm going to stop at the try block. Okay, so there's your update. Again, make sure that the update, you have a space before the double quotation mark on line 68. If you don't, it's going to run into each other, and it's going to cause some problems. So make sure that you have these spaces like I provided over here. So cuss name is assigned a question mark. Remember that question mark is really a anonymous placeholder, comma, space, double quotation mark for all of these, comma, space, double quotation mark, except for the last one where cuss ID equals quotation mark, question mark and then quotation mark. There's no space there. Okay, so again, make sure the spaces are there as is. They're important in this particular situation. And all the way up to the end of the try block on line 98. You could pause it, type all that in. Then we're going to do the catch and finally blocks. So here's the catch and finally blocks all the way up to 109. And that's all part of the update method. Okay, the update method. So there's your opening curly bracket, line 63, and then finally your closing bracket on line 109. Now let's do the delete. Here's everything for delete right there. I could even make it a little bit larger. Okay, that's everything for delete. And it's going to get the ID for that particular customer. Remember, we're not going to delete them all, right? We're only going to delete a particular customer. So delete this customer here, Bobby Sue. Remember, it's going to make sure that the capability is so that the user doesn't delete it automatically without making sure they want to. Click OK, and then it will delete that particular user. And notice it's gone. Double check. Go into your data repository. And here I have 5 records. Do a select all. Now I have 4 records. So I deleted customer ID number 2. Okay. That's the delete. Now here is the select customer. Now what is select customer for? Can I show them all here? Yes, I can, but I'll have to make it a little bit smaller. So here is for select customer, and all the way up to the finally block. Nope, I can't. So I'll make it larger and then just show up to the try, up to the try, end of the try, which is from here to line 168. Now you're probably asking yourself, what is the select customer method for? The select customer method, gang, is for the modify page, right? Select all from customer where cuss ID equals anonymous placeholder, whatever that cuss ID was. Now before I'll show that right now so you can see it, okay? So either for the delete, we want to select that, but here it would be for the, not for the delete, but for the, in this particular situation, we want to select the customer where the customer ID is a specific ID, and then we'll just show everything for that particular customer. Notice if I select edit there, it's going to show Felicia. If I go here, it's going to show Stevie. If I go here, it's going to show Billy Smith. Remember, we changed Smith in a prior video. Was Billy Bob before. Okay, so there's all the way up to the try block. And I'm starting 138 to 168. Now I'm going to do the catch and finally blocks. What is a finally block for? A finally block for, gang, in Java, what it's usually used for is to do any housekeeping. So if there are any open connections, any files that are open or anything like that, you want to make sure you close any database connections or any files. Here, we're closing the result set, we're closing the prepared statement, and we're closing the actual connection pool. We're freeing the connection pool. So those are the methods we're calling. And again, DB utilities is for the utilities file that we created. Again, you don't have to um, um, recreate that class, or I should say recompile that class. It's already compiled. So there's our try block, there's our catch block, and there's our finally block, line 180, which ends the select customer. And now we're going to do the next one, which is select customers plural, all customers. Now here I added some comments here for you, and that is we're going to retrieve all the customers, and that is going to be put into an array list. And what array list is a dynamic structure. In other words, we can add, update, or delete, whereas in an array is very limiting. It's a fixed length structure, but an array list is a dynamic data structure, and Java gives us that. Can I add everything here? No, I can't. So I'll just do from the start of the method. So this is going to be select customers, and I'm just going to go all the way to the end of the try block, which is line 220. So from 189 to 220, you could pause it there. And then I'm going to do the catch block, which is from 221 to 232. Okay, you could actually copy and paste some of this stuff and then just modify it accordingly from the previous methods. Next is the email exists, and all that's going to do is return a true or false if that email exists or not, right? So we're going to select customer email from customer where cost email equals the anonymous placeholder. Now again, this method doesn't even, you don't even need it. It's not even part of this application, but I highly encourage you to code it anyway and then add additional capabilities to this application. For instance, if you want to add you can have link it to a user's email, and you could send an email to the user, create a form. The user can submit a form for their email, and what it will do is then return to that particular email a temporary password, and that's sent to the user. They can then access that page and then create a permanent password. Or if you want, you can check a user based upon their email. Does that user exist? If there is an email, you can return their first name, last name, street, city, state, zip, etc., whatever you want to. Okay, that is the email exist method. And then finally, don't forget line 262, because 262 is actually the end of the class, but you should already have that, so don't add two of them. If your class doesn't compile, that means you have too many closing curly brackets. You already have this from assignment number 5. So that actually is, here's the opening curly bracket for this class on line 21, and there's a closing curly bracket on line 262. Okay? All right, gang, that's it for this video. That's it for this project. If you have any questions, please post them to the discussion board, or if it's of a specific individual nature, you can send me an email. All right, y'all. See you in class.